Hello and welcome everyone to a special episode of the Cultured Nerd Podcast. Today I'm sitting down with actor Sam Benjamin. You have seen him, honestly, from the big hype of the Zack Snyder's Justice League. He was very known amongst the community of the release of Snyder Cut community. He is starring in a new film called The Payday, which comes out this next Friday, the 11th. We're going to talk about that movie, his history, and then everything in between. So let's get right into it. All right. Thank you for joining me, Sam. How you doing?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. It's a nice sort of overcast day for me. We went from having just this nice fall time like around Halloween, then went into the rainy season, and now it's apparently below freezing this whole week, which is just insane to me. So
Okay, where are you?
Washington State, over on the Pacific Northwest.
Okay, cool.
So a little bit outside
You were
Seattle. So lots of pine trees, lots of rain.
nice. Sounds great.
Well, I mean, you're from the UK. You guys are used to the rain environment. So
Oh
I
yeah,
think like the rain is kind of the only thing that I've always kind of assumed that the Seattle area and like the UK are kind of similar in terms
yeah,
of weather wise.
yeah. I think because I'm in LA at the moment, and when you meet East Coasters who are in
Yeah,
LA, they're very much like when they describe especially their winters or their Christmas times. It
yeah,
sounds very much like a British version too.
yeah, and it's funny because I mean I grew up down just south of LA a bit. I still got family out in LA. Lots of family out there, and when I moved up here to Washington, it was kind of like, oh, what do you mean there's four seasons here? What is this?
There
And
you go.
I didn't know what because in where I grew up, it was like sunny or rainy, and it was like only a 10-degree shift in temperature. Like it was like year
Consistent.
round, nice. And then I moved up here, and the weather changes, and I acclimated pretty quickly, but it was a rough change.
Cool.
But so you are in a new movie coming out on Friday called The Payday, and this film, and honestly, I watched the trailer. It looks like a fun heist film. Um, so tell me a little bit about the movie.
Yeah, so it's called The Payday. It's a crime caper heist movie. It's got some action, some comedy, some romance. It's got a throwback vibe to old school, uh, heist movies like Ocean's 11 or the Thomas Crown
Mhm.
Affair, or Set It Off. But also we'd like to think it's got a modern, I guess, a modern millennial or new generation kind of blue collar theme running through it of like it's very much set in 2022 about that feeling that a lot of people have of like, hang on a minute, we've played by the rules, and yet we're watching people who aren't playing by the rules and they're making billions of dollars and not getting any repercussions from breaking the rules. So there's a bit of that theme running through it. But yeah, so we hopefully it's a mix of a genre picture, but also has a bit of a meat underneath it as well.
Yeah, and when I was watching the trailer, it definitely had like an Ocean's 11 kind of Guy Ritchie feel to it, which was a lot of fun. When I was like, this looks really, I like this vibe, and
Yeah,
I was really liking the overall like the cinematography, like the camera work. They did such a good job on this. Like you see a lot of these giant movies that just they don't look this good, which is super weird. And
yeah,
it's really funny that you can still kind of capture like you can find movies like this where the cinematography, the camera work, everything in between is like triple A, and you're like, this came out of nowhere because you wrote this film too, right?
yeah. So I wrote the screenplay. It's a co-creation of myself and the leading lady Kyla Fry. We're good friends. We've known each other for a while, and we did a short film and a web series a while ago. And yeah, we just ended up creating these characters, and we thought, right, what kind of movie do we want to see? And then it was a long story to getting it made, but yeah, it's an independent movie
Mhm.
and much lower budget than, say, a Justice League or an Avengers movie. Let's just say. But it's very character story driven, and
Yeah.
it is amazing what you can do. Sam Bradford's the director. He's the man who's created the visual imagery for it, and he's very much a filmmaker who likes movies that look beautiful, and
Yeah.
he takes his time with the storyboarding and what the shots are going to be and what kind of look. And as a nod to those, when you look at those movies like Ocean's 11,
Mm-hmm.
they look slick, they look glossy, and they're playful in their presentation. So we wanted to go for that kind of style with this one.
And you've worked with him a few times, I can tell. I mean, you worked with him on The Few, you worked with him on Double Cross with looks like Kyla as well. So he's kind of like he's a close friend, it seems.
Yeah. He's it's very much and it's kind of what happens in, you realize as you're in the industry a bit more. The likes of Scorsese or David O. Russell or Zack Snyder, and they do like to bring back in people that they've worked with and they trust. And yeah, we've got a good like three-way trinity going between Sam Bradford, Kyla Fry, and I, and we both know what we all know what we can do and where our skills lie, I guess. So we could exploit that to the maximum.
And that's awesome. I love how you brought that up because there is it's. I used to joke with it with my family because my family was very deep rooted in Hollywood and very big, and my uncles were all key grips, and they worked on the sets, and they ran everything on the sets, working with these awesome directors. And they always talked about how like Hollywood essentially is almost like a system of nepotism where you find your people and then you just bring them with you everywhere.
Yeah.
And that's how, I mean, Zack Snyder will always use the same crew for every film. Like that's just kind of his go-to. And then Chris Nolan uses like the same 5 or 6 actors in every film he does. And you see this a lot where it's like the moment they find someone new and they're like, I like you now. You're gonna make your career with me, and they just follow you the whole time. And it's always fun to see that if you just find the right click, it's kind of like a ride or die with a lot of people, which is really fun to see in Hollywood.
Yeah, it's great. And when you're on the outside looking in, sometimes it can be annoying because you go, "Oh, I really wanted to. I could play that part," and then you don't realize that the director already decided who was playing that
Yeah.
part before they even started writing the script, because they're friends with them and they've done 3 movies before, and a lot of it's a human business. So when you're on set, like, you want to have a good time, and
Hmm.
if you obviously people have got to be on set who can do the job, but you want to have a good time as well. So if you've worked with people and it was fun, and they're great and they're talented, then bring them back in again, or you'll get asked back in. So, oh yeah, this guy was great.
Oh, for sure. And one of the things that I learned about growing up is that it's kind of like that old adage. They always say it in movies that it's not about how good you are, it's about who you know. And that's really Hollywood. I mean, you have to network, you have to know the right people, just make friends with everybody essentially, because eventually those people will remember you, they'll bring you into things, and you'll be seen for these things. And
Yeah,
it's really fun it's fun that people like to think that, oh, I'll make my big break and I'll just be like an a-hole to everybody about it. But you're like, no, you have to become friends with everybody, because that's how you get the work. I mean, if you're like a diva on stage and you're mean to your key grips, the cameraman, they'll talk to the other crews. And if the director's tight with the crew, that's it for you. So it's like,
yeah. I,
it's
I was
amazing.
I was just talking with a director friend of mine last night, and he was talking about that very specific thing about how he's just been working with someone, and he just said they're a nightmare. They're a total, like, they're just being really difficult on set, and I'm never going to work with them again. And I'm probably anyone I know isn't going to work with her again either. So
Right.
it happens. But I think it's all about finding your tribe, finding your people, and not everyone's going to get on with everyone.
Yeah.
Um, and that's the beauty of it. And also how the system works is how, we walk past a billboard for a new movie. And if it's like, I just went to see Ticket to Paradise with George Clooney and Julia Roberts,
Right.
and I adore both of them. And I was going to see that film no matter what was in the trailer, because it's that familiarity, and you feel like, oh yeah, I just want to see George Clooney and Julia Roberts doing the stuff.
Yeah. And then it's funny. I mean, we're way past the days where like in old Hollywood, I like to always say old Hollywood for this. Like in old Hollywood, you had actors and cast and crew that were locked to the studio, and that was how the contracts always
Yeah,
worked. Like
the studio system. Yeah,
and then that went away, and now it's kind of like, and now it's basically kind of word of mouth. Like if you are good with these people, they will vouch for you for these people, and it's like a lot of people don't realize how tight knit Hollywood as a whole is now, and it's like you said, it's very tribal, and as long as the tribes are all getting along, you're going to find work within any tribe, which is kind of fun.
Yeah.
But you've been seen before by a lot of people with a lot of like background work, and I don't say that as like I love your independent work. I think it's fantastic, but you've also made it into bigger projects in a lesser capacity, which is kind of what happens to everybody in a sense in Hollywood. You were in Peaky Blinders, and that's where I remember first seeing you. Was I was watching that show, and I'm like, hey, okay, that's cool. And then everyone in the road to Justice League, for Zack Snyder's Justice League, we knew going into that Zack had lost 90% of his film, and we knew he had a big cast list, and we didn't know who anybody was.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was it was a cosplayer that
Liz Wonder.
Liz Wonder, yes, Liz Wonder.
Yeah.
She had posted a picture of you, and then Zack had liked it, and it blew up, and everyone thought you were Hal Jordan.
Mm-hmm.
And because of how NDAs work, you could basically just say, yes, I'm in the movie. And that was all you were allowed to say for the entire time. And and a lot of people said, oh, his silence means it's true, but that's not how Hollywood works. But I loved that whole thing because you were so fun with the fans. You were so like, I can't talk about it, but that's really cool. And then
mm-hmm.
A lot of fans, regardless of your role, who actually came out, you were in the Steppenwolf sequence. You were the MP that was outside of Star Labs. And
there you go.
And then when people saw you, they're like, nope, he's still Hal Jordan to me. And the fans still want you to wear a green ring.
Yes.
And I think it would be awesome. I mean, have you tried looking into pursuing like the TV show, for instance? I mean, the TV show right now is in the middle of this massive retooling.
Mm-hmm.
Have you pursued any capacity trying to get into that casting?
It's such an interesting. First of all, yeah, the whole I adore, and I'm so grateful for all of the DC fan passion, support, fan art, and the messages that I still get. So thank you if you're one of those people. And it's hard to answer that question because essentially, as we've just said, the business works in mysterious ways. Obviously, I said it on another. I was on Christina Wren's podcast actually, and the answer
lovely.
is,
I think,
yeah, she's great. The answer
cool.
is I feel so ready to take an opportunity to play Green Lantern, and I have ideas about what I'd like to do if I did have that opportunity. In terms of the actual kind of pursuing or whatever, it's like a fine line. It's obviously Zack has cast me in something before. Warner Brothers and DC are going through a bit of change at the moment. I've been following the Green Lantern Corps updates with that show, and yeah, my management are well aware of it, and they've been keeping tabs on it and updating the team behind that show, and they are aware of the fact that when you Google me, if you type in my name, like one of the first things that comes up after it as a suggestion is Green Lantern or Hal Jordan.
And so there's an artist that I know actually. He's a fantastic guy, and this came up. He's a concept artist, Tygo Datrinti, and he did this piece of you.
Yeah,
and that's like number one for a lot of people. That like, holy crap, it's perfect. And I see it, and I'm like, yeah, it is perfect. I would love to see him as that. And he's actually done a lot of work now. And I think he actually got tapped to do some of the work with Blue Beetle. Like he officially got brought in because of his awesome fan art that he does.
Awesome.
He's fantastic. He's a really cool guy. But he did one of the definitive.
Yeah,
like, I searched Sam Benjamin Green Lantern. That is the number one image result. Like it's right there. Like, boom. You mean this fella?
Well, hey, and I'm grateful for that. You know, he's one of many that has made some gorgeous artwork where it's just blown me away. So yeah, essentially, I don't really know what's going to happen with, in terms of the new direction of Warner Brothers. Obviously, Black Adam and Henry Cavill, and it feels like there's a lot of possibilities for multiple things to happen. So essentially, I'm game, and I'm here, and I'd love an opportunity. So what they want to do with Hal Jordan or Green Lantern is up to them, and I guess it's just a case of staying ready. And yeah, if I appreciate anyone who's linking me with the role.
I honestly, it's the Green Lantern show as a whole. When the fact that they're now retooling it from the ground up is kind of exciting in a way, because they spent years developing one path with one set of scripts with one cast, and now it's like completely undone, and they're redoing it from the ground up. And from my understanding, the show is still standalone outside of the film, so they can literally cast whoever they want in whatever capacity and still do something completely different on film, which I really love when the studio doesn't shoehorn themselves into whatever I do has to be this way forever. But it seems like Warner Brothers Discovery is, for all the criticisms they're getting, what they're doing right with DC is allowing the multiverse to thrive. So you could get a ring, and it wouldn't stop anyone else from also getting a ring. We could get 25 Green Lanterns playing the same actor in different capacities, and then eventually they could do like a crisis movie, and you could be standing there next to whoever else is doing it, which would be the dream, right? I mean, that sounds exciting.
It does sound exciting. Yeah, it's the industry works in in mysterious ways, and we'll see. I know that before the retooling, as you say, I know that when my management spoke to them, they basically said, "Oh, at the moment, there's no like Hal Jordan plans anyway."
Yeah.
Whether that's actually true or not, I don't know. Whether they were just,
it actually was. And from my understanding, the original plan for that show was to be adjacent to the Green Lantern Corps movie, where they had the movie focusing on John and Hal, and the show was about everyone else.
Yeah. So and so who knows? Who knows what's going to happen? Let's wait and see. But yeah. I'm excited to see as a fan what happens, and yeah, I'd love to have the opportunity to film some kind of social media video dissing Ryan Reynolds in a playful way. No, I love Ryan Reynolds, and I love like the way he acknowledges everything that he's done. So, but I can definitely see a duet happening.
That would be great. And so back to the movie, The Payday. You are working with this familiar cast, but you also brought in Simon Callow.
Yes.
And this fella, when I watched the trailer, I was like, okay, yes, I know who that is. I cannot place where. And the entire time I'm looking at him, I'm thinking of other actors, I'm thinking of other roles, and I know that he's been I know he was in Phantom of the Opera, he was in Shakespeare in Love, he's in a lot of these very classical movies, right? But you told me before we went on that there was one movie in particular that you and your other castmates remembered in particular and brought him up, and I'm not sure he was fun about it, or if he was you got a giggle out of it. But that's immediately when I looked at him for a few seconds, when I clicked, I'm like, oh my gosh, I know exactly who this guy is. And it's ironic that was the movie I recognize him for, since I know him for so many other films too.
Well, yeah, and it's that line, isn't it? Of he's like, but Mr. Ventura, I thought you loved all animals. And then Jim Carrey's like, this is a lovely room of death. So yeah, we Kyler and I are big Jim Carrey fans, and we remembered him from Ace Ventura: When Nature Calls. So we were getting a kick out of it. I had
I'll throw it up on the screen for people who don't.
Oh, there it is.
Yep, it was
Do Not Pass Go.
And that's the scene where he did the was it the lemons and the asparagus, or was it the rolls and asparagus, where he did that whole mocking thing. And I remember seeing that and just being like, this guy is clearly has to have like the strongest composure to deal with Jim Carrey like that.
Yeah, deal with Jim, yeah. So yeah, when I was on set with Simon, I didn't not acknowledge it, but when he came on set, it was mainly when you're on set as well, there's not as much, it was kind of very much getting the scenes done. And Simon and I talked a lot about, he was very into the dialogue of the script, and we would talk, and he'd he took it very seriously and was like, oh, so this line here, do you mind if, I hear what you're doing with there, but I think there's a better simile that we can use in this bit of blah, blah, blah. And I was like, Simon, do what you want. It's fine. It's fine. But he was very respectful, and yeah, it was great to watch him work.
And see, there's always a fine line with like that kind of level of improv from the actors. I mean, you get some movies where the improvisation allows actors to truly become their characters, and it's a wonderful thing. And then you get other movies where they go so far in it that you kind of lose the improv. And
it's tricky, and I think some directors are very skilled at managing it really well. I get the impression Scorsese lets his actors riff a lot.
Yeah.
And I think that's an example of when it just really works.
But for every Scorsese you get out there, you get like a Thor: Love and Thunder, where the movie was admittedly mostly improvisation, and a lot of people felt like it was improv too much and it lost what it was going for because of that. So since you also wrote this film, and I know there's a lot of people who will say like, oh, writers don't like it when other people come in, but you obviously you welcomed it. So
I mean, yeah,
how did you?
He didn't make many changes, and I guess that's my actor. If you're an actor and a writer, I'm sure some writers are like this anyway, but if you're an actor and a writer, you know that actors often think more and more deeply about a character than anyone else because they're focused all on that character. So if an actor comes to you and says, oh, I know what you're going for there, but I thought that, if he grew up here, then maybe he would use this word instead or something like that. And you go, there's a film shooting right now in Florida called Bad Tenant that I wrote, and I'm filming a role in it next week. But the guy playing a character in it called me up, and he basically said some of the vocabulary didn't feel authentic to him, and I basically was like, dude, change it, make it your own. Like if you've done the work on the character, make it your own. So I think there's an extra trust in actors that I think I'd have that maybe other writers don't. I think maybe in theatre it's a bit different if it's a theatrical play.
Yeah.
Or if you've got someone like Aaron Sorkin dialogue, it's very specific. It's rhythmic and it's, all that kind of thing. So I'm not a precious writer.
Well, no, I've always liked that. I mean, when actors are able to add layers to their characters, I think it does add a little authenticity to it.
Yeah.
Because I mean, most people when you see a movie and everything, you see what's presented to them. You see the character as as you see them. Like, so this character comes in, oh, this is exactly who they are, and this is what we're supposed to see. But when the actor approaches that, to get into the proper headspace, they have to, like you said, build up an entire life for this person.
Yeah.
And
if they're good.
If they're good, yeah. And if they do it correctly,
if they want to be there, yeah.
It adds a level to it that's sometimes missed, unlike soap operas or daytime TV, where you're like, wow, that's a very one-dimensional character. But because of digging deep into the background, you see a lot of little nuances that only people, like if say, okay, my character grew up here, so I'm going to do something that only people from here are going to recognize, and it's going to add that level of realism just for that small subgroup.
Yeah.
Well, like you said, they changed certain words because, oh, he grew up here, so this is the language he would use here. And I've always greatly appreciated that, just because it adds. The worst thing for me in a movie is when I get pulled out of the suspension of disbelief. When I'm watching it, I'm like, okay, now it's a movie again. But when I get sucked into it, that authenticity adds that layer that I love.
Yeah, that's great.
So with this film coming out this next week, it's going to be available on video on demand. It's going to be popping up pre-orders on iTunes. You said it's also going to be on Amazon in the US and the UK. You did mention that there is going to be a limited theatrical release on the East Coast.
Yeah, it's going to be released in 20 screens on November the 14th. I've got the screens here. It's like in Albany, Buffalo, Burlington, Hartford and New Haven, New York, Reno, Richmond, Petersburg, and Washington, D.C.
Okay.
You can search it on AMC Theaters if you're in one of those places. or just Google it. It's coming out November 14th. There's a few websites that have listed it. So if you can catch a screening, go and see it and see it on the big screen. That is, obviously we initially were aiming to get a theatrical release. Obviously, it doesn't always happen these days, and being a digital release isn't, it's actually these days it's a wonderful thing in terms of how people consume content because it's accessible and people can watch it straight away in the comfort of their home cinema.
Yep.
So it's all good.
I think in the post-COVID world, the theatrical experience is harder to achieve for a lot of things just because of just the world itself. Like, it seems like the tent poles are only the only things making it to theaters lately, and it's a shame that it's going that way. But I think, from my understanding, with Warner Brothers Discovery, they're trying to change that dynamic a bit and put everything in the theatrical.
I think that's great. I think
I think fantastic. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, I'm a big theater goer. I've got my AMC pass and I see 1 or 2 movies a week usually. So I do think it's still unrivaled. And if anything, I personally, after the lockdown period, it's made me appreciate it more. Like, I love that communal, especially, just said before, Ticket to Paradise with Clooney and Roberts, like that kind of movie. It was a packed house. The laughter is contagious, and it's also interesting, like when somebody will laugh at something that you are like, was that funny? And then that makes you laugh because you're like, oh, they got a crazy sense of humor, what the hell? And then all that kind of thing. So it was really and just seeing different people there enjoying it, and a big family that maybe doesn't go to the theater as much, and then a few couples that are nervous around each other and things like that. It's like really great to see just people heading out there and seeing a movie, sharing a movie.
I completely agree. I love the theatrical experience now because it reminds me of just going to the actual theater. Like, when I was younger, when I was in high school and everything, I did the drama, the thing with my friends. Like, my friends were all the actors, and I was like, I'm going to go stage production. I'm going to build the sets. I'm going to do the light work. I'm going to do all the background stuff. And that's it was always kind of ironic because when I saw my family, I'm like, hey, I'm doing this now. And they're like, your uncle's a key grip. He did that for like the last 50 years. And I was like, well,
it's in the blood.
Funny. Yeah. And he kept saying that. He's like, well, maybe one day. And I'm like, maybe. And I was like, no, I like moved away from that whole environment. But I love the experience, just for you said, because when you go to the theater, when you go to movies, it's not just the movie that you're experiencing, it's the environment. Yeah. And that atmosphere, like when you said people will laugh at certain things, and it's almost contagious, where you feel what they're feeling. It's very fun experience.
And also, I feel like there's lots of moments in it's that shared experience as well. It's almost it becomes more permanent in your memory. Like I can remember, you'll think of a film and I'll remember who my girlfriend was when that film was out and what happened that night, or oh yeah, that was when we kind of made up and got back together and went out again for 2 more months and we watched that film, or you get all of those funny memories. Or I remember when I went to, like, I remember like Batman v Superman. I saw it with my dad, and it was one of the last movies that I saw with him, and I can still see the expression on his face to my right of, like, when he was munching on the popcorn, and just him, and also seeing him, like my dad compared to the internet, like when it came out on the internet, and there's all this, and maybe it didn't get the critic reviews that people thought, and it divided people and all this, and my dad was just like, he was an old school macho man, and he was just like, oh yeah, Batman and Superman going at it, boom, let's do it. And then it was just so much, you get the beauty from other people of how they see the movie as well.
Exactly. And it's funny how that whole experience is so ingrained in us. When people say, oh, streaming is the future, it's going to be a convenience, yes, but it's also, it's like when they say, oh, movies are going to kill theater, it never did and never will. Streaming is never going to kill that either.
Yeah, and also it's like, you go back to the 80s and when video came out, and they thought that was going to kill cinema, and but all it did was created another avenue of how people can enjoy movies. You know, so yeah,
In
it's
fact,
all
it
good,
opened
but
the door. I mean, it gave birth to a whole new subgenre of films that
yeah,
never made it to
exactly.
theaters. And then,
Some more naughty than others.
yeah, but speaking of Batman, I remember when I was looking into your project, The Few, Kevin Conroy.
Yeah.
So
So
how was that?
yeah, so for those of you who don't know, so I wrote, I grew up on superhero comics and movies and TV, and I wanted to create a British superhero story with Sam Bradford, who's the director of The Payday, and we created a very short web series. It was like 4-minute episodes, 6 episodes. It was like a gritty, dark British superhero show, and for the second season, we wanted to do it on a bigger budget, so we launched a crowdfunder, and I sent a letter to Kevin Conroy because there's like my character has this mentor character that was going to be introduced in the second season, and I thought, oh, just imagine. And then we were like, well, hey, we can only ask. So then I wrote a letter to Kevin Conroy and sent it to his people, and then he basically replied and gave us a letter of intent and said, hey, if you guys get the money and get this made, I'll be in it. Definitely. I like what you guys are doing. So it's like, oh my God. And then we hit the crowdfunder and we publicized that we had Conroy on board. And we got some money in, but we didn't make enough to do it justice.
Mm-hmm.
So we were like, we don't want to half-arse it. We basically didn't make it in the end because we didn't get enough money from the crowdfunder, but I nearly had a scene with some scenes with Conroy, which would have been incredible because he's just a goddamn hero.
Yeah, it's funny because certain actors will always personify those characters. I mean, and whenever I read comic books, I always hear Conroy when I'm reading Batman. Like,
Oh,
that would have been like the dream. Like, I know for you, like it's always like you always have like a wish list of people you would love to work with for those exact reasons. Like, oh, you helped mold my childhood.
yep.
I want you. I want to be like a tree behind you, and just in any capacity. Like, let me just be in this play with you, and I'll be a boulder. Like, I'll dress up, put a tarp on me, and as long
Yeah,
as
it's
I'm working in your proximity.
it's very it is that balance of, it's like, even when I've been in LA a lot recently, and I'll go to a coffee shop and I'll see someone and I'll be thinking, I'll be chatting to someone having a meeting, and then like over their shoulder, I'm like, wait, is that? And then I'm like, be cool, okay, be cool, okay, everything's normal. They're not sitting there. But then the crazy thing is, as well, obviously the beauty of the industry that I'm in, which I love, is you end up working with people that you grew up watching or that you watch now and you go, oh my God, like I'm with. And I always, whenever I've worked with someone like that, I always try and hold off
Yeah,
on the
you
fandom.
want to fanboy to their face. Yeah.
I'll keep it to myself. And then like maybe week 3 of shooting, I'll go, so when I did a movie, I Am Vengeance, Retaliation. It's on Netflix. It's a British action movie.
Mm-hmm.
And Stu Bennett, or Bad News Barrett from WWE, plays the lead. And I'm in most of the scenes with him. I'm like his right-hand younger recruit. And for a lot of it, I just didn't really let on that I was a wrestling fan at all. And then it wasn't until about week 3 that when he started talking about wrestling, I started speaking up more or putting in my 2 cents. And then at one point he was like, he looked at me and then it ended up, I was like, yeah, I'm a big wrestling fan, like, da-da-da. And he's like, dude, why didn't you tell me at the beginning? That would have given me a big boost. He was like, I could have done with that. I could have done with that confidence, He was like, you've been hiding it this whole time. And he goes, everyone else has been getting all the plaudits. And, I'm a big, big star too. So it's funny.
It's always funny. There was a few times when I've done interviews with actors that I'll pop in, I'll be like, hello. And then like in my insides, I'm like screaming. I'm like, oh my God. Yeah. Like my more recent one, when my co-host and we sat down with Tom Welling and Michael Rosenbaum of Smallville. Oof. And I was like, and they're like, oh, hi, Taylor. I'm like, he said my name. And I was
Yeah.
like immediately like,
You're like, oh my God.
here it is. Breathe.
Yeah.
Don't fanboy. Don't freak out.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, it's really hard to hold it in when you're such a huge fan. And then, but they also, like you said, they love hearing it too. Like it's
I mean, yeah,
fun.
they're just human. It's like,
Yeah.
someone pays you a compliment. A lot of people don't like compliments though. Some people do, some people don't. So it depends on how it's going to go. That's why
You gotta feel it. Yeah.
you never know.
But you are a big wrestling fan. Was it all like just WWE, WWF? Like my childhood was WWF before it turned into WWE. So I had like Macho Man Randy Savage, Hulk Hogan, and those were my childhood icons.
Yeah, I guess my when I was, because it always sticks with you when you're like super young, who's so I guess when I was like, my memory of when I was a really young kid and I totally was all in and I believed everything and was totally invested was when Brett and Stone Cold Steve Austin
Okay.
were rivaling, and it was that brief period when it was the Hart Foundation and versus America, and from that storyline, and then also on a Friday night, my dad actually, for some reason, Monday Night Raw was on a Friday night over here, and I'd watch it with my dad at the weekend at his place, and then one week he said, hey, he's like, why are we watching this Raw stuff? He's like, there's this other show on TNT called Nitro, and it's well better. So then we switched and started watching WCW, and my dad loved Goldberg.
Yeah.
And then so that was like one of my favorite early memories of just watching that era of like Goldberg, Sting, Hollywood Hogan, Buff Bagwell, and Big Papa Pump, and all of that. And then I've kind of, there was a period when I stopped watching it when WCW and WWE kind of became one, because I kind of felt like it just kind of lost a bit of that aggression and kind of competition, but then I ended up falling back into it, and so yeah, and then I always, I discover, a friend of mine and I did a podcast a while ago called Wrestle Star Podcast, where we started watching the Starcades from the 80s, which was NWA, which went into WCW. So I love that old school stuff as well. So yeah, and I've got a short film called Screw Job that's in post production, that's set in the world of independent British wrestling.
Oh,
So that's going to be heading to festivals soon. So I'd love to do more in that world.
that's exciting. It's always funny to me that you have a lot of people, they associate the UK, they associate the British culture with like high posh, like all that
Yeah.
like gentlemanly stuff, and then you see when every once in a while you'll see like the other side of it, and I always love seeing like, no, they're not all royalty. That
No.
it's amazing. Like
And
when you
yeah,
watch like
and
Peaky Blinders, or you even see like Sherlock Holmes, where they have like the underground boxing matches, and I'm like, I love this. I live for this. This is fantastic.
yeah. Well, I'm glad, because that's the kind of, it's that working class blue collar side, especially in the north of England, where I'm from. It's there's a real kind of, almost like there's a lot of glam and outrageousness and fun in the working class culture of England, and I think we're starting to see more of it. But I look forward to being in more things that showcase that, and hopefully the Payday shows a little bit more of that, kind of everyday blue collar type people who people can relate to, rather than super posh, a tiny minority of people that were born into riches, for example, which obviously, hey, it's not their choice. You're born into what you're born into, and we all
Right.
make the best with the cards we're dealt. So, but yeah, there's loads of different cultures in Britain, and I think the American audience is getting into it more. Especially, there's a lot of British shows out now that showcase more variety and
Oh yeah,
diversity of
and now
stuff.
that a lot of these shows are becoming much more mainstream, like you see, I mean, Doctor Who has always done such a fantastic
Mhm.
job just showing every aspect of it. I recently, a couple years back, got into that show, The Misfits, which was like, let's show you
Yeah.
how the dark side of all of it, like the underground of it all, and I was like, oh, this is fun. And then you get tons of stuff like that. But with this movie, The Payday, you have
Yep.
uh, you have Kayla. She's working as an IT tech,
Yeah.
right? Which in the 2022, that's such a relatable field, especially just
Yeah.
being like, being just kind of like berated by your boss, by your management, and then you're like, you know what, I'm done. Like you can
Yeah.
kind of relate so much to wanting to. What if I just stole this one thing?
Yeah.
Like it's kind of like every blue collar is like kind of working fantasy. Like what if I just one up my boss and just like
Yeah.
made it away? Like that's when you watch stuff like that, and it's ironic because like the career path that I've decided to go into like I left the medical field and I'm going back into the computer side of things. And I saw this trailer, and I'm like, swear to God, it's gonna be me one of these days. I'm just gonna be like fed up with whoever I'm working for and be like, nope, I'm gonna pull a
Yeah.
Superman 3. I'm gonna throw out some random code that's gonna make me millions.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
never gonna know about it.
Yeah. And hopefully, yeah, when people see the payday, hopefully it has that. That's the beauty of a heist movie, isn't it? Or any kind of movie like that where there's a bunch of bank robbers or there's a bunch of con artists like Ocean's 11 or
Mm-hmm.
even it's that there's an excitement to it and there's a danger to it, but there's also a thrill of going, ooh, it's a big risk, but there's a big reward at the end of it,
Well, without
which is
giving away too much about the film, one of my
yeah.
favorite aspects of all the Ocean's movies was the constant double crossing, the triple crossing, the
Mm-hmm.
constant like the audience is being tricked in the end of this too. Like you got something like that, right? Like some sort of like you don't see the ending coming.
Are you asking me if we have it?
Yeah, like do you have that kind of like, or are people going to be able to predict this a mile away, or is there going to be twist after twist? Is going to be
I'd, I'm interested to know. I mean, I'd like to think that it has that, it leans into the genre tropes of a crime caper heist movie in the sense of the plan is laid out. It sounds like it's, yeah, we're gonna do this and then that'll
things
happen
go
and then
awry.
boom, we're home and dry. And straight away it's like, oh, that's not happened right. Oh, that's gone wrong. Uh-oh, I haven't got that. Oh no, then what's happening now? So hopefully people get a kick out of that, and then there's some twists and turns in there that hopefully are fun, and there's some deception and surprise and thrills and spills.
Well, that's definitely exciting. When you guys sent me the all the assets for this show, I was looking through them. I'm like, I can't. All of these look like they're spoilers. Like I was like, I can't do
Okay,
this.
well, I appreciate that. I appreciate
I
that.
was looking. I'm like, this looks like a lot of fun, but I'm not
Yeah,
gonna jump down this rabbit
yeah.
hole and throw up images like that.
Well,
That
yeah,
person told me.
people can pre-order it on iTunes now,
Yeah,
and they can.
I'm gonna throw it up for everybody right now. If you're watching, it's
There you
on.
go. There it is.
Scan
Give us
that
a
QR code.
pre-order.
Pre-order this thing. It comes out on Friday the 11th, and let's enjoy a good heist film because we don't get a lot of heist films nowadays. You get movies that are like, oh, this is a superhero movie and a heist film, but I'm like, I just want like a true blue heist film. Like I love that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So
Well, hopefully that's what we wanted to do, and we filmed it towards the back end of London's lockdown, so there was a real energy to the when we were on set of escapism, and that underdog defiance of going. It really made us go, yeah, let's have a bit of, because there is some interesting themes in there about modern society and class and
mhm.
injustice, but also it's a movie that you can sit back with your boyfriend, girlfriend, wife, husband, partner, or a bunch of friends and throw it on the big screen at home and just make some popcorn and just have a night in with a fun movie as well.
And that's what we need more of nowadays. We don't need
Yeah,
movies. We don't need movies that
politics is
like,
enough.
yeah, like I get so annoyed when everything's shoehorned. Like I want the escapism. I'm ready for the fun. Like
Yeah,
I don't need to be reminded of all the other nonsense going on in the world. Let me see a fun caper film, and I'm all for it.
there you go. The
But
payday is
thank
it.
you so much for this.
Thank
I
you.
cannot wait for this film. It's gonna be loads of fun, and I hope everyone else gets the thrill of it too. But for everyone there, thank you so much for following us today. You can support the Culture Nerd on Patreon. My host today, obviously Taylor Murphy. My co-host today could not make it, but he was very upset about it because as an actor, he wanted to pick your brain, Sam, but it
Oh,
didn't work out scheduling wise. But thank you all for joining us, and we will see you all next time.